Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start today with a linguistic curiosity that I have to admit I hadn't really thought about before reading this source material.
Oh, yeah.
It's this tiny detail, almost like a word game, but the speaker uses it to frame, well, the entire state of the world. In English, you have the word emergence, like something new coming forth, a beginning.
Right.
Now, you swapped just one letter, replaced that we at the end with an E. What do you get?
You get emergency.
Exactly. You go from a new beginning to a full-blown crisis in like a single keystroke.
Yeah.
And in the document we're diving into today, that shift isn't just a clever pun, it is the fundamental reality.
Yeah, it's the whole ballgame.
We are looking at a speech delivered by Reverend Sun Myung called God's Call to Action in the Time of Emergency.
And to really get the vibe here, we have to set the scene. This is December 12, 1982. We're the Belvedere Estate in Tarrytown, New York. It's probably freezing cold early in the morning.
Right. And you have thousands of followers there listening to this Korean religious leader. And I mean, the context of 1982 is so crucial.
It really is. The Cold War is not history yet.
No, it's the nightly news. People
Yeah.
are genuinely afraid of nuclear war. Reagan's in the White House. The Soviet Union is the evil empire. The tension is, well, it's real.
Precisely. So when Reverend Moon stands up,
Mm-hmm.
this speech, it doesn't read like your typical Sunday sermon. He's not offering comforting platitudes or telling people how to have a nice week.
No, it reads much more like a strategic briefing in a war room.
Exactly.
That's what really struck me. The stakes feel incredibly high. He's talking about a universal emergency. And the premise seems to be that the fate of the entire world, geopolitics, history, the cosmos, it all hangs in the balance. But here's the kicker. He argues that the pivot point for all of this isn't in Washington or Moscow. It's inside of you.
That is the core friction of this speech. He collapses the macro, the global politics, into the micro, your individual behavior. And to understand why he does that, we have to look at this through the lens of a specific theological idea. He calls it dispensational history.
Okay, dispensational history. That sounds like a college course I might have slept through. So break that down for us. What are we actually talking about?
So in this worldview, history isn't just random stuff happening. It's more like a math equation or a physics problem. And the core idea is indemnity.
Indemnity, like insurance.
In a way, yeah. Think of it more like debt repayment. The idea is that human sin created a spiritual debt, and God, being a God of justice, can't just wave a magic wand and say, it's all good, I forgive you.
The debt has to be paid. The books have to be balanced.
Exactly. And they're balanced through these specific time periods of faithfulness or suffering. It's highly transactional.
Gotta give examples, right?
He does.
Yeah.
He mentions Jacob suffering for 21 years to pay a specific debt. Moses for 40 years. It's very precise. And the terrifying part of this speech is his claim that the current equation, the one governing 1982, is completely unbalanced. It's in a really precarious state.
And this brings us to one of the most vivid and I gotta say kind of disturbing metaphors in the entire text. He talks about the borderline, but he's not talking about the Iron Curtain.
No. He's talking about a line that runs right through the human heart. This is where the emergency becomes personal. He argues that the line between God's side and Satan's side cuts through every single one of us. You're not just good or bad. You're a contested territory.
And he uses this analogy of the big toe that I can't get it out of my head.
It is memorable.
He says you might think you're a faithful person. You might be 99% on God's side. You're doing the work, you're praying. But if just your big toe is hanging over that line into Satan's territory?
Yeah, it is all the leverage the enemy needs.
He says Satan has a loop of string.
It's worse. It's almost mechanical. He says Satan uses winches and ropes. If that toe is available, Satan loops a string around it and literally uses a winch to drag your entire body across the line.
That seems incredibly harsh. I mean, if 99% of me is good and I have one little bad habit or a moment of doubt, my toe, is that really enough to lose everything?
According to this text, yes. And here's the really scary legalistic implication. Once you are dragged over that line, God cannot intervene.
Why not? He's God.
Jurisdiction. If you step into Satan's territory, even just with a toe, you are now under the laws of that domain. It's like stepping across an international border. You've handed over your sovereignty.
So there's absolutely no safe zone. You're either fully in or you're totally vulnerable.
Exactly. And this leads him to discuss a Korean concept called pyunduk.
Kyunduk. What does that mean?
It basically means a fickle person, someone who changes their mind constantly. He describes this whole spectrum of humanity. Some people cross the line once in a lifetime, some once a year.
But the Kyunduk,
They're jumping back and forth.
Several times an hour, he says. And he connects this to the biblical story of Lot's wife. Remember, she looks back at Sodom and turns into a pillar of salt. The message is that vacillating, that standing with one foot in each camp is spiritually lethal. You have to stabilize. He also throws this curveball about the terms Cain and Abel. Now, I went to Sunday school. Abel's the good brother, Cain's the bad one. Simple. But he really messes with those categories here.
He really complicates it. In his view, Cain and Abel aren't just people. They're roles or positions. And then he drops this bomb on his religious audience. He says you can have Abel people who are currently on the satanic side.
So they're not religious at all, maybe?
Maybe not. But they have good hearts and they're open to truth. And conversely...
You can have Cain inside the church.
Precisely. This is a massive critique of institutional religion. He argues that the religious world often takes the role of Cain. They get arrogant, they protect their turf, and because of that, they actually block God's new work.
So just because you're in the room doesn't mean you aren't Cain.
That's the warning.
Okay, so we have this individual battlefield, the toe, the winch, the fickleness. But how does my big toe affect the Cold War? Because that's the leap he makes.
This goes back to that indemnity math we talked about. He traces a timeline. Jacob's 21 years, Moses' 40 years. And then he gets to Jesus. And this is where the theology gets really, really distinct from traditional Christianity.
Yeah, this part stopped me in my tracks. He has this whole what-if scenario for Jesus.
He argues that the crucifixion was, in a sense, a plan B, a tragedy. He claims that if Jesus had been accepted by his people, he would have gone straight to Rome.
To the Senate, to the emperor.
Exactly, to the center of global power. And if Jesus had preached in Rome and won over the empire, the dispensation, the restoration of the world would have happened 2,000 years ago.
So we wouldn't be here in 1982 or now dealing with all this. It would have been done.
Correct. But because that opportunity was lost, history's been in this holding pattern, just repeating these cycles. And this is where he pivots to America. He draws a direct parallel. The United States is the modern Rome.
We're the new designated hitter. It's our turn at bat.
And he pinpoints a very specific moment, 1945, the end of World War II. He calls this the golden time.
Which makes sense. America is a superpower, booming economy, Christian foundation.
He says that was the moment. The U.S., with its allies, had the power and the spirit to unify the world. But his verdict is brutal. America lost that chance.
And he points to the 1960s as the beginning of the collapse. He specifically mentions the assassination of JFK and the death of Dag Hammarskjöld at the UN.
He sees those as spiritual markers, signs that God's protection was lifting because the responsibility wasn't fulfilled.
And this leads to his frustration with how Americans view the Messiah. He has this bit that's actually, kind of funny, where he mocks the whole idea of Jesus just coming on a cloud.
The parachute line.
Yeah, he asks, if he comes on a cloud, is he wearing a parachute?
It's humorous, but it's a serious critique. He's asking, if the Messiah is just some supernatural being floating down, what does that have to do with us? How can a superhero be a role model for regular humans?
You can't emulate a guy who flies.
Exactly. Humanity needs a real person, someone with flesh and blood who struggles but still embodies the way, the truth, and the life. He's saying the emergence isn't a magic show, it's a human reality.
But, and this is the friction, he seems to think Americans are uniquely bad at accepting this. He has this whole section on the culture clash that is pretty withering.
It really is. He critiques the American ego. He even points out a linguistic detail. In English, the word I is always capitalized.
I never thought about that. It's just grammar to us.
But to him, it's a sign of a culture obsessed with the self. He says Jesus' disciples, they didn't have training in individualism. They were simple fishermen. They could just follow. But Americans, we're educated, we're sophisticated, we analyze everything.
And we're rich. He brings up the camel through the eye of a needle scripture.
And applies it to the whole nation. It's as difficult for a rich nation to enter God's kingdom as it is for a rich man.
Okay, so this is where it sounds, well, just wild. This is the 80s, the greed is good era. And his solution for this emergency is what? Poverty.
Basically, yeah. He calls for downward mobility.
That is a tough sell.
It is the absolute antithesis of the American dream. He argues that for Americans to be useful to God, they have to voluntarily lower their standard of living. He says they should live like African people of that time, eating and living simply.
What's the logic there? Is it a punishment?
No, it's strategic. The logic is unity. You can't build unity from the top down. You have to go to the bottom. If you cling to your comfort and your status, you're disconnected from the world's suffering. And if you're disconnected, you're useless. He even warns that if Americans refuse, God will have to leave the country.
That is a massive ultimatum. Get poor or God leaves. And he ties this into the identity of his followers, talking about the term Mooney.
Right, which was a slur.
Yeah, that's how I always heard it. Like they were brainwashed.
And it was derogatory. But he tries to reclaim it. He flips it. He calls himself the champion of receiving opposition. He even jokes he should be in the Guinness Book of World Records for it.
He seems to enjoy the fight.
He does. He frames persecution as proof of righteousness. And he challenges his followers. If you're vacillating, if you're worried about your reputation, you are not a Mooney. He says you're more worthy of being struck by lightning.
Wow.
He wants them to own that identity as a badge of honor. It means you've crossed the borderline and you're not looking back.
Which brings us to the actual strategy. We've got the theology, the history, but what's the plan? He says there's a 3-year window.
Right. From 1982, he's looking at 1985 as a deadline for America's future.
And the enemy is communism.
Explicitly. He sees it as the global embodiment of Kane state atheism, and he believes the only group dedicated enough to stop it is his movement.
It's interesting how he views his own legal troubles in this light. He was facing government investigations, tax charges.
And most people would try to downplay that. He reframes it. The courtroom isn't a place of defense, it's a place of offense. He claims the whole thing is a strategy to change public opinion. He refuses to ask the judge for sympathy.
He wants to win by proving he can take the hit.
Dignity and persecution, exactly.
And the ultimate goal isn't just winning a court case. It's marching to Moscow.
That's the recurring motif, march to Moscow.
But he's not talking about booking a flight.
No, not at all. He emphasizes the physical reality. He asks the audience, are you willing to march to Moscow barefoot?
Barefoot.
He contrasts it with an airplane. What has more value, comfort or suffering? He sees this as a literal boots-on-the-ground struggle for the soul of the world.
This intensity, it's just relentless. And it goes into everything, even how he talks about prayer. This was one of the most convicting parts of the text for me, honestly.
For me, prayers.
Yeah. God bless my business. God help my kid. That kind of thing.
He calls that looking at God with a satanic eye.
That's a brutal phrase.
He means you're looking at God through the lens of your own selfishness. He says if you're on the borderline looking out for yourself and you say, God, I love you, God feels nothing. It's just noise.
Because God isn't a vending machine.
Right? He says God is a God of justice. He can't just answer the prayers of people in Satan's domain. It would violate the law of the borderline.
And then, just to ratchet up the intensity one last time, he drops the jail standard.
He asks the listener, would you rather be free and tempted by the world, or would you rather spend your life in jail if it guaranteed you stayed on God's side?
Most people would say, can I have option C? Free and good.
But he says option C is a myth. That's the big toe problem. And then he gets to the ethical peak of the sermon, the family question.
This is the part that I think would stop most people cold.
It's the Abraham and Isaac test. He admits his own children feel distant from him because he sees himself as public property. He sacrificed his role as a father for his role as a leader.
And he demands the listener consider doing the same.
He asks, could you take your spouse to the border, kiss them goodbye, and never see them again if it was necessary for God's will?
That is terrifying.
It is. He's asking if you're willing to forsake the people you love most for the cosmos, for the bigger picture. The universal emergency comes before everything.
So when we step back and look at this whole thing, what's the takeaway? It's a worldview that demands 100%. There's no room for, I'll do this on the weekends.
Absolutely not. It completely rejects any gray area. And he ends with a comparison to David and Goliath.
The classic underdog story.
But he flips it. He says modern believers are actually more knowledgeable than David. David had simple faith in a sling. We, he says, have the whole history of dispensation. We know the math. We know about the toe and the winch.
But I have no excuse.
Exactly. He argues that because we have this knowledge, we should have even more confidence to defeat the modern Goliath, which to him is communism and secularism.
It's a call to confidence, but through extreme sacrifice. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with today. We live in a world of, infinite choices. You can be a little this, a little of that, curate your own identity. But the source material we dove into today implies that all those choices are an illusion.
It all comes back to the borderline.
Right. It suggests there are really only two choices, God or Satan. And the most dangerous place to be isn't on the bad side. It's thinking you can stand with one foot in each.
Unaware of the rope around your big toe.
And on that heavy note, watch your step. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.